I've had the privilege of introducing Jim many times, but I want to read this today. I'm going to get into some of the details because he's been an extraordinary public servant for the people of the state of Illinois since basically graduating law school and going to work with the Attorney General's office, and then shortly thereafter with the Cook County State's Attorney's office, where he was involved in felony review, felony trial, narcotics prosecutions. Jim became a state rep in 1995, which luckily, because none of us are getting older, was really just yesterday. And he was the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate back in about 2002. Jim returned to the halls of Springfield shortly thereafter, and in a very short period of time became acclaimed as the leader for his colleagues on the Republican side down in the State House, which I'll briefly recall Bob Michael saying, "I'm sick and tired of people saying I'm the minority leader. I am the Republican leader." And that's the job that our speaker holds today, and that's why I know all of you are going to give him a big City Club welcome today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican leader of the Illinois House. Let's hear it for Jim Durkin.
Thank you, Chris.
See you in a bit.
Thanks a lot. I think it's, before I get going, I just want to remember, just to remind people, I don't think they know this, but my first job out of college was with the Attorney General office, where when I met this young fellow many years ago by the name of Paul Green, and I said I wanted an internship. So I ended up working for Paul Green and Mike Hayes back then. So there's a lot of history here. I have so many friends in the audience, so it's really, I feel like I'm in the friendly confines, but it's hard to say that as a White Sox fan. So anyway, I got it out of me. So, and that's about as far as I'm going to go with Cubs or anything that's complimentary for the Chicago Cubs. So, but let me just tell you, it was a long weekend. I was in, if any of you have been to Metamora, Illinois, I would encourage you to go there. I was there Friday night, and we do these Lincoln Day dinners. So, but I tell you what, it's, and Saturday I was in Murfreesboro, way south, and in the evening I was in Carbondale, and now we're back here today. So even though there's a lot of travel with the job, I will tell you this, and it's a lot of time away from home and friends. It is really fascinating to travel the state, and there's parts of the state which I'm glad that I've been able to visit, because I don't know under any other circumstances I would get to these parts in the state. But I think it's fascinating, and it really helps me grow as a legislator, a lawmaker, to sit down and talk to people, whether it's in Nashville, Illinois, like on last Saturday morning, or folks in Woodford County who are in the suburbs of Metamora, if there is such a thing. But what I think is important to know is that, yes, I grew up in the west side of Chicago for a few years, lived in Westchester my whole life. I currently live in Western Springs, is that the world doesn't turn around Western Springs. And that's what I need to understand, and that's what I think my duty, and it's my obligation, is to be able to understand how people think in these parts of the state and what's important for them, because it's not necessarily what's a priority for me, but I have to be able to understand that and respect that. And I'm just saying that when I travel the state, I try to learn a little bit about each part of this state, this region, and trust me, I spend a lot of time in the car, so it gives me the ability to research and to just kind of know a little bit about the history of whatever town, whatever county it is. So with that, I just want to thank my colleagues who have entrusted me in this very important position. Many of them are here today, and I want to say that we have a great working relationship. We are co-equals. I've got a little more responsibility, but I do know that our caucus is still a very strong caucus, but I also want to just thank them for the support they extend to me. It's been a rough year, but the fact is, the most important thing people need to remember is that we hold together. We have not broken, and we are not going to break. So when all of our friends were mentioned earlier, I just want to say thank you to my friends in the House of Representatives for giving me this opportunity to be able to try to provide guidance and to give you my thoughts. and basically be a cheerleader, but also the coach who keeps us together in very tough times. So thank you, Joe Sosnowski, Margot, everyone who's here today. I can't see most of you because I don't have my glasses on. So Patty Belloc. So in any event, so again, Jay and Paul and Chris, thank you for the opportunity for allowing me just to give my thoughts and perspective on a time in Illinois which is unique, it's historic, and it's a time which I think most of us will have agreed, something that was due to happen. But like I said, I'll give you my thoughts on that. I just told you I'm just really honored to be the House Republican leader, and I will say this, maybe I'm an eternal optimist, but I do believe that there is a pathway, an opportunity for us to get through this historic impasse by doing it in a fair, responsible manner. And I'll talk about that during my speech. So folks, let me just start and just remind everybody that we are all driven by our past as much as our present circumstances. All of us view the world through a different lens, carrying with us a lifetime of experience that mold our perspective. I surmise that if I asked each and every one of you your thoughts on the current budget impasse, no two answers would be the same. You all read the same newspaper articles, you've seen the same newscast, you've all heard the same talking points from both sides of the debate, yet each one of you would likely have a slightly different take. Maybe you're a union member with anxiety because of what you think or what you're hearing about what this administration's goals are. Maybe you're just a small business owner or a large business owner looking at this mess and saying to yourself, why the hell am I still staying here in Illinois? Or maybe you're a civic leader, a mayor or a city council member who is quickly losing interest in serving your community because of the stalemate in Springfield, knowing that unlike the state of Illinois, who can operate and run on a deficit, a lot of our local governments can't do it. So, regardless of where you may fall on that spectrum, you all have one thing in common. Everyone in this room has lived a life of opportunity and, in a sense, privilege. Not privileged in the sense that things were handed to you, but privileged in the sense that at some point or another, you seized an opportunity that was presented to you. Whether you're Ivy League educated or if you went into the workforce after high school, you found opportunity. And that opportunity gave you purpose. And the odds are that opportunity was found right here in Illinois. So let's all agree that we are the products of a great state. I love my state. I love it so much, I'm willing to make the sacrifices. And I know my friends here who are sitting with me, who are on my side of the aisle, and I know many of my friends on the other side of the aisle feel the same way. It's about sacrifice. So before we get too deep into it, I just want to reintroduce my family. My wife, Celeste, was mentioned earlier. She's here. Thank you, Celeste. It's a lot of time away from home. So, but I'm also very fortunate to have, for the first time in the 3 years, every one of my siblings is here today. My brother at the table over here, my brother Tom, my brother Kevin, my brother Terry, my brother Mike, my brother Pat, my brother Bob, and my brother Bill. I want to thank them. What's left in the vocabulary? Is there anything here? And trust me, I know that they have very challenging schedules. They have court calls and a variety of things, so thank you guys for coming. So, but I'll briefly get into that, but we're much like everybody in this room. We grew up in the west side of Chicago. Many of you are Southsiders, Northsiders, but we moved out to Westchester when I was 2 years old. With 8 boys, you kind of grow up with the usual nonsense. Hijinks, which I couldn't find something to substitute for. I had something for hijinks, but I had to substitute hijinks because it just didn't work. And the usual unnecessary competition about everything and nothing, with the occasional brawl and the occasional bad attitudes. Sound familiar, guys? Sound like 10265 Canterbury Avenue in Westchester, Illinois. But being of Irish heritage, it doesn't quite help that equation. Now, I did speak about privilege, but my brothers and I were very privileged to have 2 amazing and dedicated parents who instilled within us the foundation for success. And with that came opportunity through education and employment in the state of Illinois. Opportunity in the state of Illinois. Now, my counterpart, Speaker Madigan, grew up in a neighborhood not too far from where I was raised, where I presume he was immersed in a similar Irish Catholic family setting with similar values. We do share things in common from our upbringing, and we both, one of the things that we share, and I think it's universal, is that we both care about the middle class and agree that the middle class should grow and thrive. But this is where our viewpoints diverge. When Speaker Madigan talks about his protection of the middle class, he's omitting the fact that the foundation of the middle class wasn't built on public sector jobs. In Illinois, middle class was built by our manufacturers, small business owners, and our agricultural committee, not the state, not the city, or county governments. It was built through a broad diversity of skills and strong private sector economy. During his speech at this podium, even though it was a different place, a few months back, the Speaker expressed his conviction that government should have a strong involvement in our economic system. I don't necessarily disagree, but, however, I firmly believe that the state's true core mission is to deliver on its obligations, not to protect itself as an employer. Those obligations are to educate our youth, our children of Illinois, to provide for our most vulnerable, to create policies that will help grow jobs and afford future generations the same opportunities as us, and foremost, to pass a responsible and balanced, I emphasize balanced budget, which ensures those obligations will be fulfilled. Now, this is where the House Republicans are supposed to clap. We didn't mark this on our... All right. Hey, Wheeler, I'm watching you. All right. A little late. Points against, young man. All right. Anyway, just a few days ago, we had the honor of the president visiting us in Springfield. It was exciting to see him. It doesn't make a difference what party you're with, but the fact is that one of our own actually went to Washington. Not only went to Washington, but as the President of the United States. So it was a true honor for him to join us and to hear his thoughts. And what was the message of the day from the President is that he brought with him the message of civility and a better politics. But for those of you who know me, you know of my strong conviction that civility will never be lost. We speak with passion and determination on the floor of representatives, but we are also civil. And we're very professional. Now, I agree with the President when he said that there has been a decrease in bipartisan camaraderie in recent years, and that's very unfortunate. I've witnessed it firsthand back in the times I started back in 1995, where there was a time where we did break bread. We would socialize. Those days are over. But that's unfortunate, but I'm here to say that that's basically the byproduct of the gotcha politics, the political male piece votes, and the never-ending class warfare votes staged in the House chamber. This endless practice doesn't help our state nor our residents. That being said, what's happening today won't simply be solved by a better politics. Our politics here in Illinois have never been pretty, but Illinois thrived for the better part of a century in spite of its politics due to a wealth of natural resources, human capital, geographic advantages, and a healthy industrial and agricultural community. So what's changed? We still have an abundance of natural resources flowing through and sitting below our great state. We have a wealth of highly trained workers who want nothing more than a stable job. What has changed is our economy, and our policies have been forced through a political blender that's created a patchwork of Band-Aids, quick fixes, and short-term solutions aimed at solving single problems, rather than creating a forward-thinking strategy that solves real problems and creates real solutions. But let's be honest, our past policies are myopic. They're rooted in the archaic belief that government can and should be all things to all people. These policies are entrenched in a belief that Illinois is a vacuum where people will tolerate higher taxes through property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, fees, service taxes, tax this, fee this, whatever, we've seen it, and that people will just accept it. I'm here to say that those days should be over, and like it or not, the fate of our middle class is directly tied to our policies. So, to my Democratic colleagues, please hear this. Changing the status quo in Illinois won't hurt the middle class. It will save the middle class. Middle class means you grow up in a 3-bedroom house with 7 brothers and 2 bathrooms. So I know a little bit about the middle class. So, all right. Yeah. If you listen to our Democrat leaders, you would think they have a monopoly on the middle class. But their action and results show just the opposite. For the past 13 years, Illinois has been besieged by record unemployment, unpaid bills, underfunding of our pension systems, and more taxes. This is what has hurt the middle class. I repeat, this is what has hurt the middle class. So let's be clear. The status quo has already put the middle class behind in Illinois, and by refusing to entertain changes to boost the Illinois business climate will only continue to hurt the middle class. So I'm just going to go through some statistics, and but let's make these are very clear. So I just want to just bear with me for a minute, for a little bit. Illinois had a net loss of over 67,000 people from the previous 12 months, ending in July of 2015. The total most of any state and the 49th worst per capita. In 2015, Illinois lost 3,000 jobs. During the same period, Illinois generated 57,000 new jobs. Iowa generated 25,000. Kentucky, where they still pride themselves about making moonshine, generated 40,000 jobs. Missouri generated 26,000 jobs. That's all according to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. As of December 2015, our unemployment in Illinois is still at 5.9%. Compare that with Indiana at 4.4%. Iowa's 3.4%, Kentucky's 5.3%, Missouri's 4.4%, Wisconsin 4.3%. You can see that we're clearly trailing in the Midwest. It's not acceptable, folks. These are striking, unvarnished statistics that demonstrate a clear need for us to seek a different path here in Illinois. It just hasn't worked, folks. The numbers speak for themselves. So let's talk about, again, a few more stats. Illinois has lost, get this, 135,000 manufacturing jobs in this state over the last decade, and we're billions in debt. Look at Ohio. They currently have an excess of $2 billion in a rainy day fund that has witnessed an unprecedented growth and resurgence in manufacturing jobs across their state. And that is through forward-thinking policies, tough changes to the tax code. But the fact is, Ohio is not that much different from Illinois. So like Ohio, we must chart our own course, and that's what Governor Rauner is seeking to accomplish. But make no mistake, the middle class is not thriving in Illinois, and they haven't in some time. These statistics all demonstrate the necessity to move in a different direction, and that's what the governor is trying to do. So I'm going to take this opportunity to call on Speaker Madigan and President Cullerton. I'm going to call on them to look past the political rhetoric and heed the call of our president to improve our politics and to come to the table, and most importantly, do so with open minds. The governor laid this out as clear as it can be last Wednesday in our budget address. Now, gentlemen, President Cullerton, Speaker Madigan, the governor offered 2 different plans. Pick one. A reasonable, balanced approach that includes reforms, or the alternative, provide the governor with the tools to reduce spending in line with current revenues. If you don't like either, let's find a way to reconcile them. Let's negotiate, and let's find commonality. What's wrong with that? You guys do this in the business sector every day. You negotiate, you compromise, you find a way to reach an accord. And actually, it's done in the public sector on a regular basis, too. Why can't it be done at Springfield? So when I said, look past the rhetoric and the personalities and let's get this job done, we should do it, because that is what's holding it up right now. But if my counterparts don't believe in either one of what the governor has offered, don't repeat the insults of the past by passing grossly unbalanced budgets from your chambers like the past 2 years in FY15 and FY16. Just don't do it. It's not worthy of the chamber. It's not worthy of anyone in that building. Now, we're all passionate about our priorities, but without compromise, there could be no solution. The governor's agenda is just not rhetoric. It's not empty rhetoric. It's a set of ideas that coalesce around the core principles that the status quo isn't working for the middle class. But like my grandfather did when he arrived at Ellis Island by himself in the early 1900s from Ireland with only some pocket change and the shirt on his back, as did my parents while raising 8 boys in a 3-bedroom house, they succeeded and they found the American dream through hard work, sacrifice, and compromise. Let's ensure the same for generations to come. It's our duty, it's our obligation. Folks, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm just here to tell you that I am prepared to negotiate with the Democrats to resolve our impasse. Everything should be on the table. I don't find any great value in where we're at right now. It's not good for our state. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for our generations to come. So when I say that I'm asking the Speaker and the President of the Senate to meet with us, please do it. Do it with an open mind. We can no longer go down this path. So those are my comments for today. I'll just tell you that we've got some time ahead of us, but this can get done. This can get done. And I know that my caucus, we talk on a regular basis, and we all feel the same way. We love our states. We love it so much that we are willing to make the tough decisions, where sometimes, you know, in years past, we weren't ready to make the tough decisions. But we love our states so much, we're prepared to do it. So I want to thank you for this great opportunity. This is the third time in 3 years where I've had this chance to speak to my friends and many of our friends from my family friends and folks in the business community and elsewhere. But these are challenging times. But I think that we also know that there is history that's going to be made when we break through this. But we're going to do it in a responsible manner. That's what I'm telling everybody in this room. It's going to be responsible. It's not going to be just about taxes. It has to be about reforms. It has to be about bringing new life to Springfield. We're just not going to accept anything other than that. I'm not going to tell my caucus to do something otherwise, but we know it's at stake. So I think I've said enough. I know there'll be some questions, but thank you again for this opportunity.
All right, folks, so on your tables, I know some of you have already been filling them out. We've got the question cards, and we do want you to sign your question cards so we know where they're coming from. And we've got our friendly City Club people. So we'll get the questions going here in just 1 second. I also
do you mind if I screen them?
So we also want to welcome from the great city of Naperville. Is that in your district?
No.
Okay. I think that's Jeannie Ives. And all right, Mayor Steve Chirico visits us today
Grant
from
Worley's
Naperville.
district.
Grant Worley's district. All right. All right, here we go. So Leader Durkin, Don Schollenberger of Baird and Warner, a member of the City Club, asks, I will ask you what I asked John Cullerton when he spoke at the City Club a few weeks ago. Is there any answer to the budget problem other than Bruce Rauner caving in to Mike Madigan?
I don't know if it's rhetorical or not, but all right, let's do the best we can. No, no one has to cave. No one has to cave at all. When you negotiate, you compromise. Compromise isn't caving. And I know that the governor, I'll be quite honest, the governor has already stated that I'm willing to work with the Democrats on what has been traditionally been their priority. That's revenue. But the fact is, you need something in return. If the governor is willing to work with them on revenue, the Democrats need to work with us on our priorities, on certain reforms, whether it's workmen's compensation reform, real property tax relief. Those are things that we have to find some type of common ground. But it's a two-way street. I mean, and I'm having a really, I mean, it's fascinating to watch this, but I think at times some of my friends who are running the chambers, they don't recognize that a Republican was elected to the mansion a year and a half ago. But the fact is, you have to negotiate. You've got to, if you don't, use your supermajority, pass what you want, but that has not worked. So my advice, everybody needs to, again, as I stated in my speech, let's look past the rhetoric, the emotions, and let's start crafting a budget which is responsible when it's balanced. I mean, it's almost like a foreign word sometimes to say or even to suggest, or it's even shame on me for suggesting that we need to pass a balanced budget. But the fact is we have to. It's, you know, it affects our credit ratings, and we all know what happens on that. But there's no reason why we cannot compromise, whether it's on reforms on our business community, how we operate and how we conduct our business in Springfield. but also talking about what the priorities for the majority party is. That's how you get through it. But again, I think there's a lot of personalities in here that are kind of driven, that are not willing to budge too much. But I know through my meetings that there is a willingness on our side of the aisle to negotiate, and also to find a way through the impasse. But I don't believe caving in is the appropriate way to talk about negotiations. There is no caving in. We're not going to cave in, but I believe that we can compromise. That's what you do as adults. That's what you do when you negotiate, whether it's in a private sector or also in a public sector.
Okay, John Schomburg of Clark Hill, also a member of the City Club, Leader Durkin, same issue of Governor Rauner and Speaker Madigan in the middle ground. He asks you to address the issues of workers' compensation and the causation element of that, and also the governor moving off of collective bargaining reform. Can they agree on any of these things?
Well, I think that workmen's compensation reform, the last time we took a crack at it was about 5 years ago. It made some improvements, but not enough. As I told you, I travel the state, and one of the things that I hear day in and day out, whether it's from Caterpillar or small manufacturers, small businesses, that the rates are still too high. So we have to be able to find out what the problem is. The problem is it's a number of things, whether it's causation, meaning what percentage of the injury was job-related. You hear the anecdotal stories about the guy who pulls a hamstring over the weekend and shows up at work and takes a dive. I mean, those are the things that I think can be addressed quite easily. Causation seems to be something that is a sacred cow for many of my friends in Springfield, particularly when it comes to the unions and also the trial lawyers. But there are many other issues we can deal with on comp, whether it's going and adopting AMA guidelines, looking at certain types of rates. But there's a host of things that we can still do within the work comp system that I believe we can make incremental progress. It's not caving in, it's incremental progress. The governor has stated that the collective bargaining reforms are no longer, I believe, are priorities for him, but they will be at some point. So I will trust the governor at his word. But I do believe that if we are going to be asked to make tough decisions, Republicans are saying one thing: help us pass workmen's compensation reform, give us some relief. The numbers, I mean, they're staggering. I mean, I gave you the unemployment numbers and job losses that we have in our states, but our workmen's compensation rates are significantly higher than every other state in the Midwest. I mean, it just doesn't make sense when we have such a great manufacturing base, but we are still troubled with we try to go back in, we try to make some changes, but it doesn't really get the job done. So, John Schomburg, I'm not sure if I'm responsive to your question, but I will say this, that in my caucus, I believe that workmen's compensation is extremely important, And I am of the belief, after my discussions with also the Speaker and the President over months, that that's an area we can find some common ground. So if we're going to get through the budget, like I said, that's one of the things that we're going to have to address. It has to be part of the big plan. It has to be part of the big picture. There are other reforms that the governor feels very strong about. And I think we're also going to have some real property tax relief as well. Not the nonsense that we went through over the summer, more of the gotcha votes, which we saw, but something that's real, something that we can agree on.
Okay. Leader Durkin, here's from Mark Weiermuller, also a member of the City Club. Would you support a phase-out or an elimination of public sector pensions or a bankruptcy, if necessary, to save the property taxpayers of the state?
Well, another thing that I believe that there is at least some discussions we're having, at least at our level, is revisiting pension reform. I'm disappointed with the Supreme Court. I don't agree with them, but that's the law of the land. We put a lot of work into that last bill. It goes back a few years ago, but we're now about 9 months in since the Illinois Supreme Court ruled on our past pension bill. They gave us a narrow pathway to be able to revisit the issue, but we have agreed, and I think the president, the governor has stated that he's willing to embrace, and he has embraced, the Senate President's pension reform bill, as have I. I think we need to go back at it. He feels confident that the bill will be able to meet the standards that the Supreme Court has already stated. But pension reform is something that also is very important. We're talking about $1 billion a year in savings if we do have a pension reform bill, particularly the one that the President of the Senate has proposed over the last few years. I think bankruptcy, just remember that you cannot, a local government, whether it's Chicago, CPS, or a municipality, just can't go over to the federal court and file for bankruptcy. You have to seek legislative authority in Springfield. So at the moment, I don't think there's an appetite of the Democrat leaders to allow for a bill that Representative Sandak is championing to allow for bankruptcy protection for local governments. But talk to the mayors in this room, and you can see that the obligations they have, particularly on the benefit side, is outgrowing their normal cost of business. So something's got to give. You can't just keep going back to the property taxes. But we have 23 states that currently do have some type of authorization allowed for local governments to seek Chapter 9 protection in the bankruptcy code. It cannot be dismissed. Now, there's been a lot of people talking about, bankruptcy with Chicago, but the fact is you can't force bankruptcy. It's a voluntary action. It's something which, if the situation came to that point where there is absolutely no other place to go, I believe that it's something that should be considered. It should not be summarily dismissed, which it has been for some time.
Right. Leader Durkin, Michael Casa of the Downers Grove Economic Development Commission, a member of the City Club, asks if you would please give your analysis of the current state of the race for the Republican presidential nomination.
From what I understand, that Donald Trump is ahead. I'm not with anybody in this time. I did this twice before, and gosh, it is a headache. Putting presidential candidates on the ballot. So let the chips fall where they may. I will just say this, whoever comes across, I will be supporting. But I think that this is going to still be a fluid process. When people drop out, that means there's a constituency that's going to fall in line with another one of the candidates. So the numbers are going to still make their way. But right now it appears that Mr. Trump is obviously quite well ahead.
Let's hear it for Jim Durkin.
Thank you, Chris.
Hold on, don't go anywhere. Hey!